The party was in full swing at the upscale community center of Brookhaven Estates, a glittering symbol of suburban success where everyone knew your name and your reputation. Under the soft glow of chandeliers and amid the hum of polite conversation, Karen Matthews strode into the room with a swagger that belied her narrow worldview. Dressed in a perfectly tailored blazer and designer accessories, she carried herself as if she were the arbiter of all that was proper and refined. Karen had long prided herself on her opinions sharpened by years of prejudice and a sense of superiority that she wore like a badge of honor. That night, as the elite mingled and laughed over hors d'oeuvres, Karen's eyes fell upon a woman whose presence unsettled her. In a corner of the ballroom stood a dignified black woman, Tasha Reed, chatting softly with a group of acquaintances. Tasha's style was understated yet elegant, her natural beauty accentuated by simple, tasteful jewelry. To Karen, however, Tasha represented everything wrong with the New Order, a reminder of the diverse world that Karen believed should be kept strictly within its proper place. Unable to contain her disdain, Karen sauntered over and, with a voice dripping in condescension, began to ridicule Tasha in front of everyone. "I can't believe you're even allowed to be here," she sneered, her words laced with venom. The room fell silent for a heartbeat as Karen continued. "How dare you show up at an event like this when you clearly don't belong?" The cutting remarks echoed through the hall, and for a moment, all eyes were on Tasha. The woman's graceful composure wavered, but her dignity remained intact even as whispers of shock and disapproval rippled through the crowd. Little did Karen know that this public humiliation was about to spiral into a chain of events that would upend her carefully constructed world. For Tasha was not just any guest. She was the daughter of a prominent local judge, one whose influence stretched far beyond the polished veneer of Brookhaven Estates. In that charged moment, as Karen reveled in her own self-righteousness, the seeds of retribution were quietly being sown. The party, the impeccable image of high society, and even Karen's own sense of superiority would soon come crashing down when the truth emerged. As murmurs grew and the atmosphere turned electric with anticipation, a single incident set in motion a dramatic reversal that none could have foreseen. Karen's cruelty, so proudly displayed, was about to be repaid in full by the very forces she had always dismissed as inconsequential. In that moment, when prejudice meets consequence, nothing would ever be the same again. Before we go any further, subscribe to the channel and comment below where you are watching from. Brookhaven Estates was the kind of place where success was paraded as art and appearances mattered above all else. Nestled on sprawling, manicured lawns, the community center was an architectural marvel, its glass and steel structure reflecting the bright suburban sun and the refined tastes of its residents. Every detail was meticulously curated to project an image of prosperity and exclusivity, from the custom floral arrangements to the elegant calligraphy adorning the guest book. It was here that the city's elite gathered, their lives a tapestry of ambition, wealth, and unspoken hierarchies. At the heart of this world was Karen Matthews, a woman in her early 40s who had cultivated an image of sophistication and authority. With her perfectly coiffed hair, immaculate wardrobe, and a razor-sharp tongue, Karen prided herself on knowing what was best for her community. Yet beneath the polished surface lay deep-seated biases, attitudes forged in a past that had taught her to fear the unfamiliar and to value conformity above all else. To Karen, diversity was not a celebration, but a challenge to the order she so desperately clung to. Opposite her in this unfolding drama was Tasha Reed, a woman whose life story was as rich as it was inspiring. In her mid-30s, Tasha exuded a quiet grace that belied the hardships she had overcome. Growing up in a modest household under the protective wing of her mother, an esteemed judge with a reputation for fairness, Tasha learned early the value of resilience, empathy, and integrity. Her style was effortless and elegant, a blend of modern chic and timeless tradition. Tasha's presence at the event was a testament not only to her own achievements, but also to the enduring influence of her mother's principles. The setting for this confrontation, a glamorous party at Brookhaven Estates, was the perfect stage for a clash of values. The opulence of the surroundings, with its soft lighting, luxurious decor, and a palpable air of sophistication, contrasted starkly with the raw, unfiltered cruelty of Karen's words. Every guest in the room represented a piece of this high society mosaic, a mix of ambition, tradition, and evolving ideals. For many, the event was a celebration of success. For others, it was an opportunity to glimpse the undercurrents of a society grappling with change. Yet, within this glittering world, the human drama was raw and real. As Karen's cutting remarks hung in the air, the guests began to whisper, their expressions a blend of shock and indignation. Tasha, though visibly pained, held herself with a dignity that quietly defied the cruelty aimed at her. In that moment, the community's hidden values, the belief in compassion, respect, and the sanctity of one's upbringing, were laid bare for all to see. Unbeknownst to Karen, the very ideals she had scorned were about to come full circle. The seeds of her own downfall were being sown in that room, where every smile, every whispered conversation, and every sympathetic glance toward Tasha was a silent rebuke of her prejudice. The stage was set for a dramatic collision, a moment when the superficial trappings of wealth and status would be stripped away to reveal the true measure of a person's character. The tension in the grand dining hall grew as Karen's humiliation of Tasha escalated from mere words to a full-blown public spectacle. The initial shock soon gave way to murmurs of discontent among the guests. Some tried to ignore the incident, unwilling to disrupt the evening's festivities, while others exchanged furtive glances and whispered words of sympathy for Tasha. For many, it was clear that Karen's behavior was not only cruel, but a betrayal of the very values this community was supposed to represent. As the murmurs grew louder, a few brave souls began to speak out. A distinguished older gentleman, known for his integrity and respect for tradition, leaned toward a friend and murmured, "I have known Tasha since she was a little girl. She is one of the kindest souls in our community. How can anyone be so heartless?" His words, though soft, carried an undeniable weight and stirred a ripple of agreement among the surrounding guests. Meanwhile, Tasha's composure was being tested. Though her eyes shone with quiet dignity, the sting of Karen's words was evident in the slight tremor of her lips. She glanced around, her expression one of restrained hurt and disbelief. It wasn't long before the conversation shifted from mere whispers to a palpable sense of outrage. Several guests, moved by a deep-seated belief in fairness, began to question the propriety of Karen's actions. "Is this what we stand for?" one guest asked aloud, his voice echoing in the silence that had fallen over the hall. The conflict took on an even sharper edge when Alexander King, the self-made millionaire whose success was built on the very principles of loyalty and hard work, suddenly stood. His eyes blazed with a mixture of anger and sorrow as he recalled the warmth and guidance Tasha had provided him in his youth. "Enough!" he thundered, his voice cutting through the rising chaos. "I will not allow my past, a past built on love, sacrifice, and unwavering care, to be trampled upon by petty cruelty." His declaration stunned the room into silence, and all eyes turned toward him, their expressions a mixture of shock and admiration. As Alexander spoke, the gravity of the situation became undeniable. What had begun as a single, hateful remark was now a symbol of the deep-rooted injustices that many in the community had long endured. The confrontation was no longer just about Karen's callous behavior. It was a battle for the soul of the community, a struggle between those who clung to outdated prejudices and those who believed in the transformative power of compassion and respect. Karen's face, once so full of self-assured superiority, began to pale as the reality of the situation sank in. The room's collective disapproval was palpable. Every whispered comment, every accusing glance, was a reminder that her actions were being watched and would not be forgotten. In that moment, the seeds of retribution were planted, Retribution not through violence or overt confrontation, but through the slow, relentless force of truth and accountability. As the guests gradually resumed their conversations, the memory of the incident would continue to fester. The incident was recorded, shared, and discussed long after the gala ended, igniting debates about respect, privilege, and the power dynamics that govern high society. Karen's once impregnable facade had begun to crack, and the truth about her deep-rooted prejudice was on the verge of being exposed to the world. In the days following the gala, the scandal erupted into a full-blown public controversy. Social media was set ablaze with shared videos, screenshots, and heated discussions under hashtags such as #JusticeForTasha and #FamilyMatters. What had happened at Brookhaven Estates was no longer confined to the walls of a luxurious dining hall. It had become a symbol of the struggle against deep-seated racism in elite circles. News outlets picked up the story, and soon interviews with witnesses and community leaders dominated local television. A particularly moving segment featured a longtime resident of Brookhaven who recalled how Tasha had once cared for young Alexander King with unwavering love and dedication. She gave him everything when no one else would, the resident said, his voice thick with emotion. To see her humiliated like this, it cuts to the core of our shared humanity. These words resonated far and wide, and public sentiment began to shift in favor of Tasha. Within the corporate boardrooms of King Enterprises, discussions turned from quarterly earnings to matters of integrity and social responsibility. Alexander King, shaken by the memory of his own upbringing and the betrayal of those who had helped him along the way, found himself under immense pressure to act. Influential voices within the company began to call for a formal apology and corrective action against those responsible for the incident. Our company is built on the values of loyalty and compassion, one board member declared in a closed-door meeting. We cannot allow any behavior that undermines those principles to go unchallenged. At Brookhaven Estates, the fallout was equally intense. The management of the gala, long known for their impeccable taste and discretion, faced a barrage of criticism. Public forums and town hall meetings were convened, where community members demanded that the institution take a stand against discrimination. Protesters gathered outside the estate, holding signs that read, "Honor our past" and "No to prejudice," their chants echoing through the streets of Central City. The internal investigation into Karen Matthews's behavior grew more extensive with each passing day. Digital records, security footage, and witness testimonies were compiled into a comprehensive dossier that revealed not only the incident at the gala, but also a disturbing pattern of racist remarks and actions dating back years. The evidence was irrefutable. Karen's prejudice was not an isolated lapse, but part of a long-standing belief system that had been allowed to persist unchecked. As the pressure mounted, Karen found herself increasingly isolated. Former friends and acquaintances began to distance themselves, and whispers of her past transgressions surfaced in social media discussions. The once self-assured woman, who had walked into the gala with a sense of entitlement, now faced the relentless scrutiny of a community united in its demand for justice. The tension reached a boiling point when a high-profile press conference was organized by community leaders and corporate representatives alike. At this conference, Alexander King took to the stage and spoke passionately about the values of loyalty, respect, and the need to honor those who had shaped him. "My childhood was defined by the love and care of one extraordinary woman," he declared, his voice resonating with emotion. "To see her disrespected in this way is not just an affront to my past. It is an attack on the very essence of what it means to be human." His words struck a chord with everyone present, and the outcry for accountability became impossible to ignore. At the same time, the digital evidence continued to mount. Leaked emails, previously hidden complaint files, and video footage confirmed that Karen's actions were part of a broader pattern of discriminatory behavior. Every new piece of evidence added to the chorus of voices demanding reform, and every shared post on social media reinforced the collective belief that no one should be allowed to humiliate another without consequence. In the midst of this escalating storm, Alexander King and his inner circle resolved that it was time for a decisive response. The very institutions that had once celebrated superficial success were now being forced to confront the ugly reality of prejudice and to take bold steps towards systemic change. The stage was set for a dramatic turning point, a moment when the relentless pressure from the public and the undeniable weight of evidence would force a reversal of fortune for those who had dared to demean a woman who had given everything to nurture a child and shape a future. The rising tension, charged with the energy of a community united against injustice, promised that the final act was near, a moment when the truth would be revealed and the consequences for Karen Matthews would be irrevocable. The pivotal moment arrived on a cool, clear morning in a packed conference room at the headquarters of King Enterprises. Senior executives, legal advisors, community leaders, and members of the media had gathered to hear the final decision regarding the fallout from the gala incident. With a calm and resolute demeanor, Alexander King himself stepped up to the podium. Today, we confront not only a personal betrayal, but an institutional failure, Alexander began, his voice steady and impassioned. The actions of those who sought to humiliate the very person who nurtured me, who shaped my future, must be met with swift, uncompromising accountability. Our values are not for sale, and our legacy is built on the principles of love, respect, and unwavering loyalty. As he spoke, the room grew silent, every eye fixed on him. He continued, effective immediately, I am ordering a complete review of all internal records and the termination of any staff whose actions, past or present, betray our commitment to inclusion and decency. This is not merely a punitive measure. It is a statement that our community will no longer tolerate hate, however subtle or overt. His words resonated like a clarion call, and a murmur of approval rippled through the assembly. At that moment, a representative for Tasha Reed, the woman who had been humiliated that night, stepped forward. I stand here today as a testament to the truth that love and loyalty will always triumph over prejudice, she declared, her voice both gentle and unyielding. Her presence, dignified and strong, underscored the profound impact of a lifetime of care and sacrifice, a care that had been so callously disregarded. Inspector Daniel Mitchell then presented the final dossier, a meticulously compiled record of digital logs, internal complaints, security footage, and witness testimonies that laid bare the pattern of discriminatory behavior. Every piece of evidence was irrefutable. The Internal Affairs panel unanimously agreed. The actions of those responsible, including the derisive behavior that had once been championed by Karen Matthews, would no longer be tolerated. In that charged moment, as the weight of accountability pressed down on every person in the room, the balance of power shifted irreversibly. Alexander King's declaration, combined with the overwhelming evidence, marked the beginning of a new era, a future where the values of respect, dignity, and inclusion were paramount. The shock on the faces of those implicated in the scandal, caught on camera for all to see, became a lasting symbol of the day when deep-rooted prejudice was met with unyielding justice. The turning point was complete. The announcement sent shockwaves not only through King Enterprises but across Central City, igniting a movement that promised systemic reform and a renewed commitment to honoring one's past. For those who had suffered from cruelty and discrimination, this moment was a beacon of hope, a promise that, no matter how deeply ingrained the hate, accountability and integrity would prevail. In the weeks that followed the dramatic boardroom decision, a sense of renewal began to take root in Central City. The scandal that had once rocked the glamorous gala now spurred a transformative movement. News of the sweeping disciplinary actions and the termination of staff responsible for discriminatory behavior spread rapidly through local media and social networks, galvanizing the community and sparking debates on the need for true accountability. Tasha Reed, the woman who had been humiliated that night, became a celebrated figure, an emblem of resilience and quiet dignity. Invited to speak at community forums and corporate events, she recounted her story with grace, inspiring countless individuals to stand up against injustice. Our pasts shape us, but they do not define us, she told a packed auditorium. Her words resonated deeply, and her story became a rallying cry for those seeking change in a world too often marred by prejudice. Within King Enterprises, Alexander King spearheaded a series of reforms aimed at ensuring that such hateful behavior would never be allowed to resurface. New training programs on cultural sensitivity, ethical conduct, and inclusive leadership were introduced across the company. Strict oversight mechanisms were implemented, and internal reviews became a regular practice to ensure that every employee upheld the core values of respect and compassion. "This is the beginning of a new chapter," Alexander declared at a subsequent press conference. "We will build our future on the foundation of honesty, integrity, and the enduring belief that every individual deserves dignity." Public sentiment followed suit. Across Central City, community leaders, civil rights activists, and ordinary citizens rallied for systemic reform. Town hall meetings, public demonstrations, and social media campaigns carried messages of unity and justice. Banners bearing slogans like "Every Life Matters" and "No to Prejudice" filled the streets, and local politicians vowed to enact policies that would protect vulnerable communities from discrimination. The collective energy of the community was palpable, a united front determined to create a society where hate would no longer be given any space to thrive. For Alexander King, the incident was a painful reminder of the complexities of success. Despite his towering achievements, his heart had remained tethered to the love and sacrifice of his childhood, a love embodied by Tasha Reed, who had given him hope when he needed it most. His public denunciation of those responsible for the scandal was not only a personal catharsis, but a clarion call to all who believed that true wealth was measured not in dollars, but in values and compassion. As Central City slowly returned to its routine, the legacy of that fateful night endured as a powerful beacon of change. The painful memories of humiliation and hatred had given way to a renewed commitment to accountability and inclusivity. The transformation that began with one act of cruelty had grown into a movement that promised to reshape not only King Enterprises, but also the very fabric of the community. In the end, the story of that night became more than a tale of scandal and retribution. It was a testament to the power of integrity, the resilience of the human spirit, and the unwavering belief that justice can prevail even in the face of deep-rooted prejudice. Central City emerged stronger and more united, its people determined to forge a future where every individual was truly respected and valued. And as the sun rose over the city each morning, it brought with it a renewed promise that, with courage and conviction, even the darkest chapters of the past can be rewritten into a story of hope and redemption.